August 1995, Donna is arriving back home from a trip to Florida. She had taken her recently adopted daughter on holiday to meet her family. Her husband is unavailable to collect her on her arrival, so Donna hops in a taxi and gives the taxi driver her address. The taxi driver loads Donna's luggage into the vehicle and proceeds to drive her home. On the journey, the driver was very talkative. At first, being polite, Donna entertained a conversation with him. However, half an hour into the 90-minute journey, the driver started acting strange. First he started complimenting her about her figure and body-hugging dress. He then began to express that he often heard voices in his head that told him to carry out violent acts on people. He also mentioned that he's a good person but felt like he had multiple people living inside him, all this while speeding and driving erratically. In a bid to get the driver to stop talking, Donna said she was exhausted from her flight, and she was going to take a nap. She proceeded to close her eyes and pretend to sleep until she arrived home. As soon as she arrived home, she quickly paid the driver, grabbed her daughter out of the taxi, unloaded her luggage, and scurried into the house, locking the door behind her. Although safe, Donna was terrified and apprehensive, because this strange man now knew where she lived. Once her husband arrived from work, she gave him a big hug, and told him all about her strange encounter with the deranged taxi driver. Donna's husband was mortified, so he took it upon himself to call the head office of the taxi company and make a complaint, which would lead to the taxi company suspending the taxi driver. Within days of making this complaint, Donna would begin to receive calls from a withheld number. When she picked up, she would only hear breathing down the phone. She knew it was the taxi driver, but had no proof, so the police were unable to assist. 1 week after Donna's return, her husband was downstairs in the basement jogging on the treadmill. He hears a loud thud and muffled sounds coming from upstairs. His gut instantly tells him something isn't right. He promptly grabs his gun and runs upstairs. He exits the basement and turns left, to be greeted by one of the most horrendous sights no man should ever have to bear witness to. His wife was on her knees, with a man standing behind her, bludgeoning her head repeatedly with a hammer. Without a second thought, he points his gun, aims, and squeezes the trigger, shooting the intruder in the head. He immediately calls the police and informs them of the situation. Police and ambulance arrive quickly, but it's too late. Donna had succumbed to her injuries. Mark is distraught, crying, struggling to put his words together. In an instant, his entire world had collapsed. Even though being hailed as a hero, he didn't feel like one. He felt empty because he was unable to save his wife, and angry because who would employ such a monster, without doing significant background checks? Several months later, Donna's husband would go on to sue the taxi company, but in a bizarre twist of fate, this phone call would lead to his arrest and a life prison sentence. But why would the police arrest the hero? What was said on this phone call that made Mark a suspect? Who was responsible for Donna's death? Stick around, as today we're going to dive into the devastating death of Donna Winger, a case that would shock the community and make national headlines. Donna Ellen Brown was born on November 10, 1963 in Hollywood, Florida. Yes, you heard right, there is a city named Hollywood in Florida. She was the oldest sibling of 3. She had 2 sisters. Donna was beautiful, smart, and successful, and had a promising career as an operating room technician at the Memorial Medical Center, where all her colleagues and patients alike absolutely adored her. Donna was married to her husband Mark, who was also very successful. He was a young, charming, educated man, who worked as a nuclear engineer. The couple had met when Mark's brother set them up on a blind date. For both, it was love at first sight, and things between the couple would progress quickly. They would go on to get married, in a traditional Jewish wedding ceremony in 1989. Not long after getting married, Mark would go on to receive a high-paying job opportunity at a nuclear power plant in Springfield, Illinois, one that he couldn't refuse. Being the supportive wife Donna was, she told him to take it, and they would soon pack up and relocate to the capital city. Looking from the outside in, the couple appeared to have it all. They were in the prime years of their lives, earned good money, and owned a beautiful home in a nice upper-class neighborhood. The picture-perfect couple living the American dream, or so it seemed. You see, the couple had been trying to have a baby for many years. After trying and failing for such a long time, Donna would go on to receive the devastating news that she would be unable to conceive. But as fate would have it, one day in 1995, while Donna was working at her job, a colleague would approach her and tell her that a young new teen mom had just given birth to a baby girl and was looking to put her baby up for adoption. He asked Donna if she knew anyone who would want to adopt. There and then, Donna made the life-changing decision that she was going to be that little girl's mother. When Donna discussed it with Mark, he was absolutely elated and jumped at the idea of adopting the baby girl. In June of 1995, Donna and Mark officially adopted the baby and named her Bailey. The day she arrived at the Winger household was a special day because it also marked the couple's engagement anniversary.
And who do we see but the mommy? How do you feel, Donna?
I'm overwhelmed, and I just want her to know that it just so happens that the day she's coming home to us is the anniversary of our engagement of Mark and I.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Here comes our special delivery. Oh, look. Oh, sweet.
The Wingers' new addition was the perfect missing piece to the puzzle. They were ecstatic, and their entire extended family were also equally as excited for baby Bailey to join the family, and couldn't wait to meet her. In August of 1995, Donna took baby Bailey to her home state of Florida to introduce her to her family. They had a whale of a time, and the visit couldn't have gone any better. Donna's family adored baby Bailey, and even more so, they could see how happy being a mom made Donna. After an amazing visit, Donna's parents bid farewell to their daughter and granddaughter as they boarded their place back to St. Louis. St. Louis was roughly a 90-minute drive from her home. As her husband was unavailable to collect her on her arrival, Donna hops in a taxi and gives the taxi driver her address. The taxi driver loads Donna's luggage into the vehicle and proceeds to drive her home. Donna had ordered the cab from Bart's Transportation Company. Her driver that day was a man named Roger Harrington. Unknowingly to Donna at the time, Roger had a history of domestic violence, as well as mental illness. The drive home was very uncomfortable to say the least. On the journey, the driver was very talkative. At first, being polite, Donna entertained a conversation with him. However, half an hour into the 90-minute journey, the driver started acting strange. First he started complimenting her about her figure and body-hugging dress. He then began to express that he often heard voices in his head that told him to carry out violent acts on people. He also mentioned that he's a good person but felt like he had multiple people living inside him, all this while speeding and driving erratically. In a bid to get the driver to stop talking, Donna said she was exhausted from her flight, and she was going to take a nap. She proceeded to close her eyes and pretend to sleep until she arrived home. As soon as she arrived home, she quickly paid the driver, grabbed her daughter out of the taxi, unloaded her luggage, and scurried into the house, locking the door behind her. Although safe, Donna was terrified and apprehensive, because this strange man now knew where she lived. Donna would go on to call her family back in Florida and let them know they had arrived safe and sound. She also informed them of her terrifying experience, and that she was shaken up. On Mark's return home from work, she gave him a big hug, and told him all about her strange encounter with the deranged taxi driver. Donna's husband was mortified, so he took it upon himself to call the head office of the taxi company and make a complaint, which would lead to the taxi company putting Roger on suspension. Within days of making this complaint, Donna would begin to receive calls from a withheld number. When she picked up, she would only hear breathing down the phone. She knew it was the taxi driver, but had no proof. So police were unable to assist. However, no one could have predicted what would happen next, as the lives of the Winger family was about to change forever, in a very dramatic fashion. On August 29, 1995, the police would receive a spine-chilling phone call from Mark. The following is the actual audio from that recorded phone call.
Springfield Police.
Yes, help me.
What's the problem?
I just saw this man in my house.
He's inside your house
Killed
right
my
now?
wife. He beat my wife.
Is he in there right now?
Yes,
Does he have a gun?
Her brains are everywhere.
Where's the man at?
He's laying on the floor.
Is he dead?
I don't know. He's making weird sounds.
Sir.
20.
Sir, slow down. I can't understand you. Slow down. Is the man still in your house?
Yes, he's laying there on the floor with a bullet in his head.
Did you shoot him?
Yes, I shot him. He was killing my wife. Please, my baby's crying. My baby's crying. I gotta go. I'll call you right back. Hello?
Winger?
Yes.
This is the police department. We've got officers en route. I need to know what's going on there.
My wife is dying on the floor.
Okay, is she still alive?
I think so.
Okay, we've got ambulance en route and we've got police officers en route. Where is the gun?
I left it on the table. It's on the table. It's on the table. Please,
Okay.
God, please come here.
We've got people on the way.
Okay.
Who is this man?
I don't know who he is.
He's still inside the house?
Yes, he's laying on the floor. Okay, I gotta hold my wife. I gotta get to my wife.
Okay, are you Mark Winger?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay, and your wife is Donna?
Yes, she is.
When did the man come here?
I know, a few minutes ago. Wait, I gotta get to my wife. Please, just let me get to my wife. I won't hang up. Okay?
Okay, we've got officers en route.
Okay, my door's open.
Okay.
Okay.
What you just heard was Mark calling the police and explaining he had just shot an intruder that was murdering his wife. Mark's account was that he had been working out when he heard a loud thud upstairs. He then cautiously proceeded to make his way upstairs. When he reached the master bedroom, he noticed Bailey laying in their bed, on her back alone. According to Mark, Donna would never have left her like this. Just as Mark was looking down at Bailey, he heard muffling sounds coming from down the hall, and it sounded like Donna struggling. He then proceeds to grab his gun from the dresser and remove the safety. He makes his way down the hallway and turns left to where he could hear the muffled sounds coming from, to be greeted by one of the most horrendous sights no man should ever have to bear witness to. His wife was on her knees, with a man standing behind her, bludgeoning her head repeatedly with a hammer. Without a second thought, he points his gun, aims, and squeezes the trigger, shooting the intruder in the head. When police arrived at the Wingers' residence, the scene was absolutely horrifying. As soon as they entered the front door, they could see blood everywhere. A detective discovered Donna, aged 31, laying on the floor covered in a pool of blood. She was deceased. She had a bloody hammer laid on the ground next to her head. On the floor not too far from Donna was Roger Harrington. The taxi driver had received 2 gunshots to the head. However, he was still alive, barely. The detectives took their observations and swiftly took a few photos. They then transported Roger to the hospital, where he would go on to be pronounced dead. The police would go on to interview Mark. Mark reiterated his account of events, which was that he was working out when he heard a noise upstairs and went to investigate. When he saw the stranger attacking his wife, his first instinct was to shoot. He said after he shot him, the man was on the floor groaning, so he then approached the man on the ground and shot him again. He informed the police he wasn't aware of the man's identity. When the police informed him of the man's identity, Mark was shocked. He gasped and explained to the police that Roger was a taxi driver that had recently been harassing his wife. The police asked Mark if he recognized the murder weapon Roger had used. He explained that it was his, and the reason it was out was because Donna had left it out to remind him to hang some pictures that day. The police would also find Mark's gun on the kitchen table, alongside a pack of cigarettes and a half-finished cup of coffee. Roger's car was parked outside the Winger residence. The windows were down. When the detective inspected the vehicle, there was a note on the seat. On the note was written the time 4:30 p.m., with the Winger's address and Mark Winger's name on it. The crime scene was extremely bloody. It was evident that a struggle had ensued between Donna and her attacker. The police were very familiar with Roger and his violent criminal past, and everything at the scene appeared to support Mark's version of events. Mark was an innocent victim, cleared of any wrongdoing. As they ruled, he had acted in self-defense. Convinced Roger was the perpetrator, the case was opened and closed within 48 hours. Donna's death brought her family immense hurt and pain. It was a devastating time that took its toll on all her loved ones. Mark and Bailey had the full support of Donna's family, as they felt sorry for the new widower. However, as they resided in Florida, there was only so much support they could offer. So, the family suggested to Mark that he hires a nanny. Mark agreed. He needed the extra help. Being a single father was never on his agenda. He would go on to hire Rebecca Simic. Donna's family knew how much Bailey meant to Donna, so witnessing another woman looking after Bailey so soon after her passing was difficult. However, they were happy that Rebecca appeared to love and care for Bailey just as much as their daughter did. They were also relieved that Mark now had some assistance that would hopefully make the grieving process a tad bit easier. Rebecca would soon move into the Winger residence. Over time, her and Mark would fall in love. A year later, in 1996, to the surprise of Donna's family, Rebecca would announce she was pregnant, and her and Mark were expecting. Within a few months of falling pregnant, the new couple would go on to sell the house that Mark and Donna once called home, and relocated to the countryside. Rebecca would go on to fall pregnant 2 more times, adding 2 new additions to her and Mark's growing family. Rebecca would often describe Mark as loving, honest, caring, and seemingly trustworthy. On the face of it, she appeared to be enjoying the once perfect life Donna had previously shared with Mark. The only one hitch in their relationship was a lady called Diane Schultz. She was Donna's best friend. According to Rebecca, ever since the passing of Donna, she felt there had always been tension between herself and Diane. When Rebecca would bring it up to Mark, he would just tell her not to worry, as she was just struggling to accept the death of her best friend Donna. In the back of her mind, Rebecca believed it was more than that, but in line with Mark's wishes, she took his answer at face value, and didn't continue to make any further inquiries. Moving forward a few months, feeling cheated, Mark would go on to press charges against the company that hired Roger Harrington. A decision he would go on to regret for the rest of his life. In order for the lawsuit to commence, investigators would have to gather evidence to prove that the taxi company were liable for the death of Donna. This would include going over the forensic evidence in the case, while carefully combing through the evidence. Not only would they uncover new evidence that made them second-guess Mark's version of events on the night. In an unforeseen twist, a witness would come forward, making shocking allegations against Mark that would turn the whole investigation on its head. 4 years after Donna's passing, the year is 1999, Diane would confess to detectives that her and Mark were having an affair at the time of Donna's untimely death. She informed them that while they were having an affair, Mark would say scary things to her like, it would be better if she died, and he once even attempted to collude with her, a plan to kill his own wife. A plan she wanted no parts of. She also told them that once Mark had been informed of Donna's strange interaction with the taxi driver, he would say to Diane, I need to get this guy in the house. This confession came as a shock to detectives when they asked Diane why she had chosen to come to them now. Diane told them, when heard of Donna's death, she instantly knew in her heart that Mark was somehow responsible. She said the guilt she felt for keeping Mark's secret had taken a toll on her, both emotionally and mentally, throughout the years, leading her into a downhill spiral of depression that she could no longer bear. This confession would trigger a memory for one of the detectives. Detective Charlie Cox would go on to mention that a year after Donna's death in 1996, Mark would appear in the police station, requesting for his gun back. The detective would go on to say, I just had an uneasy feeling about it, but as the case was closed, he never investigated it further. This bombshell of a confession would lead the experts to dig a little deeper, and to their surprise, when they went over the pictures that were initially captured at the crime scene, they would notice a major inconsistency. You see, the positioning of Roger's body lying on the ground didn't align with the story Mark had previously told detectives on the night of the murder. According to forensic investigators, it would have been damn near impossible for Roger's body to fall on his back at that angle if he had been attacking Donna at that time. Additionally, Roger didn't appear to have any of Donna's blood on him, which again, wouldn't have been possible if he had been the one who initiated the frenzied attack with the hammer. But what was strange was that Mark's clothing on the day had blood splatter patterns that would have been consistent with such an attack. One of the detectives from the day started to second-guess things he had seen, and put pieces of the puzzle together. The half-finished cup of coffee on the kitchen table, was that Roger's? But why would Roger be drinking coffee in the house if he came to commit a murder? The note on the seat of Roger Harrington's car that had Mark's name on it, with an address and a time. He was a taxi driver. Could this have been an appointment reminder? Detectives were now beginning to look at Mark in a whole nother light. Another piece of the puzzle came together when detectives contacted with the taxi company Roger had been working for. Their dispatch records confirmed that on the day Donna had been killed, Mark had indeed called them, asking for a taxi, specifically requesting the driver, Roger Harrington. Police now firmly believed that Mark had planned this whole thing, and lured Roger to the house that day, using the encounter his wife had previously had with Roger as an excuse to execute his evil plan. The final piece of the puzzle would come together when investigators went over the recorded 911 call Mark had made that night, stating he had fired one shot in the intruder's head. It appeared he was in a hurry to get off the phone to the operator to attend to his crying baby, but on the call you can't hear a baby crying. What you can hear is a man groaning in agony before the phone cuts out. Detectives believe that this is when Mark realized Roger was still alive, so he came off the phone and shot him a second time in the head. While emergency services were on the way, Hence the reason they found 2 bullet wounds in the victim instead of 1. With all this newfound evidence stacking up against Mark, the civil case against the taxi company was dropped in 1999. Mark Winger was now a suspect in the brutal murders of Donna and Roger, and was facing life in prison. In May of 2002, Mark Winger finally went to trial for the murders of Donna Winger and Roger Harrington. The following was the outcome of the trial. Ann Schultz testified that Mark Winger wanted out of his marriage, and told her that he was going to lure Roger Harrington to the house to frame him. The forensic evidence showed that Mark Winger was nearby Donna when she was attacked, most likely because he was her attacker. The prosecution's theory was that Mark used the strange encounter with Harrington to set his diabolic plan to kill his wife in motion. Unfortunately, Roger was just a poor victim of circumstance for the monster that was Mark Winger. He would call Roger Harrington, luring him to their house, most likely with the objective of settling the dispute that had Harrington's job hanging in the balance. When Roger showed up to the Wingers' residence and was shot in the head by Mark. Hearing the gunshot, Donna came in the room and Mark attacked her violently with the hammer. He then dialed 911, but during the call, noticed Roger was still alive. He hung up the phone, shot Roger again, then waited for emergency services to arrive. Mark Winger maintained his innocence throughout the trial, sticking to his original story of Roger attacking Donna. On June 5, 2002, Mark Winger was found guilty of the murders of Roger Harrington and Donna Winger. Helen Harrington, Roger's mother, said, "We knew that Roger was innocent, and it finally got proven." Roger's family felt vindicated that their son was no longer considered a murderer, but a victim. Donna's family was glad to get justice, but devastated by the realization that Mark, their beloved stepson, had deceived them, committing such a heinous crime. Mark was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Rebecca would go on to raise all 4 children by herself, changing their last name to Simic, and divorcing Mark Winger. Bailey maintains a relationship with Donna's family. Bailey, Rebecca, and the other children gave an interview in 2021 to ABC, in which they described the horrific devastation their father Mark had caused them. Despite this, the children are all successful young adults, thriving in the world. They have cut all ties with their father. Mark Winger was once again found himself facing criminal charges in 2006. This time, he had tried to orchestrate the murder of Ann Schultz, and another person, who declined to pay his bail, all of this while still being locked up at the Pontiac Correctional Center. Winger was convicted on these charges, having an additional 35 years added to his life sentence. Mark Winger will rightfully die behind bars. This is a case in which things were not as they initially appeared. Had it not been for Mark's own greed, attempting to sue the taxi company, it is possible justice would have never been found for Donna and Roger. But the evidence he left behind and his own arrogance eventually brought him to justice. This is a case of Mephistophelian deceit, greed, and selfishness. And there you have it, the solved case of Donna Winger and Rob Harrington. May the victims rest in peace. Please remember that these are real people, with real families and loved ones. Please be respectful in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel, as this really helps with our development and allows us to deliver you more content like this. Until next time.